5, 4.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Dotson, and I'm your host for Poetry Today. Our guest is Diane L. Redleaf. Diane is a lawyer, nonprofit leader, child and family policy advocate, legal educator, mentor, mediator, wife, mother, and grandmother from Oak Park. She is the author of the nonfiction book, They Took the Kids Last Night, How the Child Protection System Puts Families at Risk. She's also published articles in The Atlantic, Washington Post, Reason, and The Imprint. Now this is where you're wondering, Poetry Today? She doesn't sound like a poet, but she is. Her poems have appeared in Public Knowledge's Quarterly, The Wednesday Journal, and in Highland Park Poetry's The Road Trip Anthology, which we did this summer. Diane published her first chapbook in 2022 entitled What Can Be Held Briefly, inspired by and dedicated to her grandson, Julian Libgober. In July of 2024, she released her online ebook of poetry, Odes to the States. Diane is currently finishing her full-length collection, They Take the Kids and Call It Helping. Diane is especially interested in poetry as play. At the same time, she's fascinated by poetry's power to illuminate injustice and provide new ways of understanding complex systems and relationships, all in ways legal briefs, policy papers, and nonfiction writing cannot do. Please welcome Diane. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, no, we're thrilled to have you here, and to have a chance to talk about your work, which sounds, especially your new project. That sounds very exciting. But we're really thrilled to really help promote Odes to the States.
Yeah, and I've been thrilled by the response and the opportunities that the connection to Highland Park Poetry has facilitated because of the road trip book and the this opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I think every poet has a very interesting journey in how they come to write poetry. I would like to hear about yours.
It is sort of a miracle, actually, because when I was in high school, I wrote some poetry. I was sort of a, dreamy, melancholy kind of person. Oh. and I kind of gravitated to poetry a little bit, but then, nothing after. I took some English classes, but I went for 47 years without. I wrote one poem about having cataract surgery in my 50s.
Okay.
And then I had been riding the train to work with a woman named Helen Thornton, who's a lawyer, and she lives a couple blocks from me. And over the years, I had heard about her daughter, who was in high school and did spoken word and started winning the high school contest, then the citywide contest, then the national.
Oh, wow.
She became the National Youth Poet Laureate. So when she came out with her chapbook, I wanted to hear her, and I went.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely electrifying. I hadn't been to a poetry reading, let alone one that was so dynamic and brilliant and thoughtful, and she was 19 years old.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to be like that. And then I was afraid. I started to be afraid, but I challenged myself and I said, if she can do it, I can do it. Because not that I could do it like her. She's a fabulous poet, but I don't mean it that way. But I just took it as a personal challenge, because I was saying to myself, if she has the courage, if she has the confidence in her own voice, that's what I want to have.
Oh, wow.
And how do I do that? So I just started writing, and that's my story, really,
Wow.
ever since then. But then, what was I going to do with all of this? I sort of had to learn a little bit more about it.
Right. Sure.
So I'm really self-taught, but with a lot of help, with workshops that I've gone to, Poetry Foundation especially, and then when I I kind of discovered that I like to put collections together.
Okay.
And so I've had these projects that as I write, I, see that there are themes that, come out in my daily writing.
Oh, okay.
And eventually I had my grandson was born shortly after this.
Epiphany.
This epiphany.
Yes,
yeah.
right, okay.
So that became
Yes.
sort of the first, my first foray into putting a collection together.
Okay, wonderful. Tell me about this process a little bit.
Yeah.
How did that get started?
Yeah, so I actually went back to some of my original drafts to kind of figure that out, because what I wrote the very first poem just kind of randomly as one of my morning writings, and it was an ode to Wisconsin. And this was shortly after the pandemic. After the pandemic had started. It was in August of 2020 that I wrote that poem. And so I think that I had Wisconsin kind of on my mind, because Wisconsin is, for me, a kind of a vacation place. Also, a mostly happy place. Although, in my poems, I mix a little bit of darkness. It's not all happy, but I just wrote this cheery poem about Wisconsin, and I think it was because it was one of the last states I had been in before the pandemic shut us down. I had driven to Minnesota, and of course, which is where I'm from, where I grew up, and so I went through Wisconsin. But otherwise. And then, having written one ode to a state, and I had also just recently taken a workshop at the Poetry Foundation on odes.
Okay, perfect.
So then, here's the other kind of contributor to the what must have been going on in my subconscious, is that I had done in May of 2020, I had done a big research project, which was a 50-state survey of the laws on when children can be allowed to play outside without having police called and or Child Protective Services called. And that's what a project that I work on still. I'm the legislative consultant to a group called Let Grow. So the maps, so I conceived this idea eventually, as I had more and more odes, of putting the odes on a map, just like Let Grow. Let Grow has the research is arrayed on a map, and you can click on the states. So I took that idea.
What if people could click on this and read a poem?
Let's do it as a poetry project.
Neat.
So
that was a nice, interesting genesis.
Yeah.
Well, I think, given that statement, I think you do have to read the poem that started it all. Maybe could you read the one to Wisconsin?
Did I bring Wisconsin?
Or then
did I bring Wisconsin?
Then whatever state that you wanted to.
I didn't bring Wisconsin with me, and I should have. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well,
let me do Minnesota, which is my home state.
Sure.
Or I'll do Illinois too, perhaps. Two home states.
All right.
And as I said, I do like to mix up a little bit of ode and praise with a little bit of darkness. You, my dear Minnesota, are just too nice. One might fly over you by mistake and misknowing how truly above average you are. Beneath your terse Norse stillness, you respect your snow blankets, your range, your fair dairy lasses, your grain. You birth princes, noble poets, and twins joined at the hip. You spawn malls and skyways. You give warm refuge from your long chill for all but so many refugees. Your boundless lakes exhale quiet beauty and play genial hosts to your mostly white fish, who breathe freely in your fresh and flowing streams and make their way to the great American river, untouched by the net, the hook, or boots upon their necks.
Oh wow, that the last that last line's pretty potent.
That's a little special
Yes,
thing that I like to
yes,
do with
right.
poetry. I mean, and it's kind of like you don't know where it's going to go when you're
Right,
writing.
sure,
So
yeah.
sometimes that twist, you know,
Okay.
is something that I
Oh, well,
I enjoy.
I think that having a twist at the end of a poem, it's like discovering the prize in the Cracker Jack, box.
Yeah.
It takes you in a new space, and
Yeah.
it's a surprise.
Yeah, that's
You know?
that's what the fun of
Yeah,
it
a
is,
little bit of a
partly, and
twist.
the adventure and the awakening and all of that.
Sure. Well, I'd love to hear Illinois as well.
Thank you. Let me get that. There we go. Dear chosen homeland and America's prairie cauldron, great incubator, second to none. You keep me locked in great debate with you. You drive steely skyscrapey bargains. You stride over poetry's foundations, bridge back flowing rivers. You coalesce rainbow coalitions, but hog butcher my corpulent dreams. You provide lyrical tastings and rowdy conventions. You are a flat inland for everything. You're fun and greasy, your brows high, foreheads low, mouths foaming. You croon the blues and love trouble, hoping no one notices your leader's flair for jail. You center backyard pleasures with da guys and da gals, home-based, deep-dished, ready to bulk up on weekends. You're Midwest sensible, but for your bad budgets and hidden video cams. I've had 40 years to make a go with you, find a life in you, see my crossroads cross through you, my choices open up in you. I keep on love-hating and hate loving you.
Oh, I like it. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Illinois is my adopted state too. I wasn't born here. I was originally from the East Coast, so.
Yeah, I have some roots in the East too. I was born in New York, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
And my dad
Upstate
moved out
or in
to
the city, or
I was born at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. My dad had gone to medical school there.
Wow.
And then he moved out to the Twin Cities to do a medical residency, and ended up
the rest
staying.
is history.
Yeah, ended up staying.
Nice.
And then, yeah, I came here after law school to Chicago.
Okay. Well, I guess the other thing I want to add to our discussion about Ode to the States is that not only did this project inspire you, but you in turn have inspired Highland Park Poetry, because we do an annual poetry challenge where we ask poets of all ages and levels of experience to try their hand at one of 3 challenges. And for 2025 Poetry Challenge, we invited Diane to be one of our judges and to judge the category of Ode to the State, or Ode to a Place. Ode to a Place. It just had to be. That was the only restriction. But and we mentioned, of course, that your book inspired this, and so we hope that lots of people will want to go check out a copy. And so that we're wonderful. Very honored that you're going to be judging those submissions.
Well, it's a great honor to me. I mean, as I told you, I'm not a person who's gone up through poetry through any kind of regular channels.
Well, that's the nice thing about being a judge for this. It is so subjective.
Right.
And so, if it resonates with you, then that's what we want,
Yeah.
So that's important. So that's why we have different judges every year for different categories, because nobody is going to view the same. So we shine a spotlight on Diane and her decisions in 2025, and we've already started receiving submissions. So
wow,
that's exciting.
wonderful. Yeah. So one of the things about this book, the Ode to the States, is I wanted it to start conversations about what we love about the States and what we have trouble with too.
Yes.
And because it's such a, I feel like we need to have conversations with more people about, you know, how much we love our country, really,
Right.
and how beautiful it is, and, you know, but complicated, right?
Complicated, and we don't always have the same opinions about, or
Right.
share
Right.
the same perspectives.
We're-
And I suppose that's been made very abundantly clear in our recent elections.
Yeah.
And
So
we're a diverse country.
I struggled with some of the poems because I don't have, you know, that much, you know, either background with some of them, or appreciation, and it helped
So
me in my appreciation.
Did you? What kind of research did you do?
With the initial 25 poems, I didn't do research.
Okay, it was just based on your experience in each of these places. Okay.
Yes, but as I got down the list, you know, I
Okay.
started to need to do more, a little bit of background on some of the states. And not all of them, because I've never been to Alaska,
Okay.
but I have a very strong, you know, sense of
Sure.
Alaska,
Yeah.
and so I
Okay.
can write an ode to Alaska without ever having gone there. But some of them I struggled with more. But
Well, did you? I know you brought several. Can you read another one? Maybe one that was a struggle for you?
yeah, I'll read you the last one that I wrote, which I decided. Oh, here's one that's kind of a little bit, you know, the complex relationship that I
Okay.
have with
Yeah.
the state, Virginia.
All right.
I didn't expect to love you much, dear Virginia. In fact, I doubted your appeal, taking Maryland's side in the war between the states of my mind. But as I came to know you better, I began to swoon over your beauty, needed reminders of your past treacheries, your unkind and willful independence, your obstinance, your outsized ego. Your thinking history is about you. You made it hard to accept when you were right, or to forgive you. I wanted to cut you down to a nice New England-sized state and bite your rosy red Confederate cheeks until your gentle facade cracked, and then I could see who you really were. Oh, Bull Run, Mount Vernon, Monticello, mighty Shenandoah, great glorious Potomac, the river of great falling for you many times over, just as I was ready to leave. I would look across my vista from the segregated cemetery, past monuments to enslavers and blocks where slaves were sold, and onto battlefields not 40 minutes from my now home, and feel torn to pieces over you, confused and not myself. But it's over now, Virginia. I can see clearly that it wouldn't work out between us. I'm glad we got to know each other, though. Now I realize I'm a northern girl after all. But could we, maybe, after some time apart, still be friends?
That's good. That definitely does explore the sort of the conflicted feelings about a place like that, and what that history represents. And
Yeah,
definitely get that.
yeah.
I, of course, went to the University of Virginia for my master's in theater, but Jefferson's University in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Well, it is such an interesting state.
It
It's
is,
such a
yeah.
gorgeous state,
It's
too.
beautiful. Very
Absolutely.
beautiful.
I mean, so you have all those contradictions, and Minnesota as well. I mean, you have the contradiction of, you know, the beautiful and serene kind of, and yet it's the center for, you know, intense racial struggle.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got some more questions. Talk to me a little bit about your writing routine, if you might.
Yeah, so for a long time I was writing every single day, and I'm trying to get back to that, but I'm sort of reaching a point where there was an outpouring from me, and I'm
Catching up on a 40-some years.
yeah,
of
47 years of stuff, and so I'm working on kind of the revision process, you know,
Okay.
to go back to what I've written. So I do try to write new things, and as much as I am able to. But for a long time, I was writing every single day,
Oh,
and
wow.
writing a new poem not revising
Wow.
every
All right.
single day. In fact, this book, as I looked back on it, I wrote everything in 2 months.
Impressive. Very
Thank you,
impressive.
but, I
most,
mean, I
most
did-
people's, initial forays into publishing.
Well, no, I
know.
didn't publish. I did a lot of revising later, but the initial impulses
Okay.
were all kind of. I was actually surprised to see that. So, but then it was the revision and the collating and the proofing and everything
Yeah.
else that goes into, So my process has been somewhat in flux, but I genuinely didn't understand how to go about revision.
Oh, okay.
Until I took a revision workshop, and then
Oh,
I
yeah.
started to see the complexity, all the elements that you really need to look at more carefully. I would share poems sometimes with just friends who liked poems, and different for the new collection that I'm working on. I've shared with a lot of my lawyer colleagues because it's substantive about the child protection or family regulation system, as it's now called,
Okay.
by a lot of people. But so I would say, I mean, I enjoy doing collections. I've discovered that I really enjoyed that, and that's kind of my most favorite thing, to try to, group poems together. So this book was easy
Yeah.
to,
Sure.
figure
Right.
out what belonged.
Yeah.
And sort of the
What
order of
order
things.
did you just do it alphabetical order, or did you do it in the
Yeah.
order? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Because I was
did.
like, in the order of which state joined the
No.
union, or
when I did do a reading, and I grouped the poems by my life story
okay. All right.
poems,
Yeah.
and then my vacation poems, and then other
Yeah.
poems. So
Okay.
that would be the kind of the categorization
Sure.
that I would apply. Not to read it straight through.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear about what's next for you creatively. This new collection, it sounds like, because the titles are so similar, it sounds like you're taking your nonfiction book and then mining it for material for poetry. Is that?
Yeah, the nonfiction book had an aspect of memoir to it. It was, I would call it creative nonfiction. It was stories from my life as a lawyer, in battling on behalf of families in the child welfare system.
Okay.
So some of the very same stories I have done
Okay.
as poems, and cases I've done as poems. I mean, one of my big cases was one of the poems. It's a class action that I worked on for I don't know how many years, 8 years, 7 years, and
Well, that seems like an introduction for you to read that poem.
okay, thank you. Okay, it's called James Norman. He was the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit called Norman versus McDonald. James Norman. He worked hard, proud he wasn't prone to ask help. Does that matter when he has no food in his broken refrigerator? His daughters are ages 12 and 10. His wife died a few years before. The steel mill where he once worked is shut now. Naturally, someone calls child protection. You just want to buy him some food, the director looked back, explaining. Then you realize, don't you, that you need to understand his whole ideology. By that, she meant the state should leave him, a black father, to manage on his own, then take his girls to an emergency shelter, move them from place to place, and keep them at a distance so that the state could assess what factors caused his lack of food for his girls. He is hungry. Winter is coming. He scrounges up some occasional bus fare to see his daughters, applies for disability benefits for a weak heart he kept hidden from himself. He finds lawyers to file petitions saying the right legal words so the girls will come home. All is set for a happy ending, but he drops dead before the verdict. Now there's a chapter in a book about his broken heart. A class action judgment bears James Norman's name. It clarifies that food helps parents feed their children, though the Supreme Court called such claims unenforceable. James Norman's full etiology remains unknown. It lies buried beneath the shuttered steel mills or beside his wife's grave, somewhere on Chicago's South Side.
Wow. That's going to be a heavy book to read.
It is a heavy one.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
I mean, as I started down the road of collecting and putting books together, I started with joy, and then I moved into a little bit of adventure, but this is my life's work.
Right.
The one about all the stories of the families like James Norman's.
Yeah.
That's what I.
So how far along in that process are you? Have you?
That collection has been written, and I have not exactly figured out how to get it published.
Okay, so
I'm
you're
in
looking for a
discussion-
publisher?
I'm in discussions right now with a magazine that is for parents in the child welfare system.
Okay.
And really, I would love to have that audience for the book,
Right,
because
sure.
I'm trying to, communicate in a different way what the experience of
Yeah.
the system is. And so the audience, I would love it to have an audience that, can use it in that way to, talk about the experience.
I think also, just hearing that, it sort of says, hey, wake up. You don't understand what someone's going through. Try to put yourself in their shoes, and it's tragic.
Yeah,
Tragic.
yeah. It's a heavy book, no doubt about it, and it's also very, very heavily footnoted.
Oh, okay.
With all the legal
my gosh,
cases.
How long is that book? I mean, this is is very
it's
short,
71 pages.
Okay. All right.
Right, currently. So.
So, are you thinking of expanding it, or you think it's done? Or?
I'm trying to see right now if people who are, have experience in the system can advise me about its use. I mean, I think a couple poems are going to be published in Rise magazine in the coming up issue. And they've been published in child welfare publications.
Oh, okay. That's good.
The Public Knowledge that you mentioned, the Quarterly, it has published 2 of my poems.
Oh, okay.
So, the process of publishing poetry is complicated, I'm sure,
It is.
and
It
so
is.
getting anybody
Yeah.
to publish a full-length book like
Right.
this, that's a
tough.
challenge,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
So I'm trying to figure that out at this point.
Well, we wish you the best of success.
Thank
It's
you.
obviously an important work that definitely needs to be printed and published.
Thank you.
I guess we're also excited to say that Diane Redleaf is going to help us kick off the new year of poetry. She will be the first featured poet for Highland Park Poetry on Saturday, January 11th, 2025 at 4 p.m. is when the reading begins, and an open mic immediately follows. The location will be the Wayfarer Theater office at 1850 2nd Street. There is ample parking underground, sometimes on the street as well, so should be a good time. And we will look forward to hearing more of your poems, both light and dark,
Oh, okay.
in January. And it'll be great to see you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate Highland Park Poetry, I have to say.
Oh,
it's
good.
just wonderful to be a part of this.
Well, we're really, definitely inspired by your work, and glad that you could come and talk to us about it some more. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you so much,
All
too.
right. Until next time.